Hello everyone and welcome to an online chess class where I'm going to teach you about Queen's Gambit. Probably one of the two most popular openings in chess and must known even if you don't play 1d4, and hopefully I will give you many ideas today and the mainline theory for both white and black. First, I want to make sure that you guys are able to hear me and see me well. So if anyone can, please say if the technical part is dealt with all right in the chat. I'm gonna say hello in the chat as well. And as soon as we get the confirmation, we're going to start the class. All right, so two people has confirmed that everything is working. Hello again to everyone. Please try to be active. View this as not just any stream, but as a chess lesson where you can use me as your personal chess coach. I will try to be as interactive as I can, giving you questions and exercises, and welcoming all of you to show up in the chat and give your suggestions and perhaps even questions, chess-related questions about anything that you may want me to answer. So hello Ayush, followers is also there with a funny username without a name. How should I call you, followers? Definitely not that, right? People won't understand what I'm trying to say then, yeah? Okay. So slowly people are gathering. I expect a lot of you today. And without further ado, then we can start discussing what are we going to be looking at today. And it's going to be queen's pawn opening with d4. Black will play d5. Both players are trying to fight for the center, and we're going to be looking at the move c4. So this is going to be the start of discussion for us today. And Real Best is saying, hello, Ice Chess Channel, welcome everyone. I don't bite, so everyone can say hello and actively participate in the lesson by giving questions and answers in the chat. So I would like to start with the question, guys. Why knight f6 is not a good move? I see this move very often among lower rated players, and that is going to be the first question that I want you guys to try and answer. So immediate question, what are the ideas of a Goglidze attack? I'm not good with the opening names, as long as they're sidelines, right? So then I'm really not good. So if that's a line in Queen's Gambit, then you can just give me the moves, the move order. I always learn the openings by... All right, so Kristen is suggesting us the correct answer. And the idea is that this time black won't be able to maintain the central control because we can just take that, undermine their centralized pawns, and they cannot take back with the pawn. So knight takes d5 and e4, white claims the center. Now, very similar opening that we have in chess that is called Grunfeld defense look a bit similar, but there is an improvement there for black because after a similar sequence of moves, this time this knight could capture on c3, which is sort of a relief for white, and then black is able to build massive pressure and try to destroy our center. So not having or allowing your opponent to have many pawns in the center is all right if you can attempt to destroy it, undermine it, or block it, which is not the case here if we're seeing knight f6 on move 2 in Queen's Gambit, right? So white is just playing e4, wherever the knight goes, say to b6, white will have very much superior pieces in the middle game. And practice shows that black has no good ways to destroy such center of white. So we're always prepared to meet c5, say. With d5, that's one of the ideas. Not right now, because right now we might even... yeah, but d5 is, I guess, even here all right. We have other alternatives like knight f3 as well. So if you guys meet this move on move 2, I want you just to take and play e4, and we have very good position. And That's one of the reasons why black is playing e6 or c6, so that after any kind of capture, we would be able to get grip on the square on e4 and maintain this balance by both players having only one pawn in the center that are centralized. So one of the also mistakes that amateurs make, and in case we're trying to play Queen's Gambit with black, we can also meet the move knight c3. And it's bad in this d4, d5 structures to have the knight in front of the c-pawn, because it's just wrong plan. You won't be able to achieve e4. Black will start controlling e4 with the pawn and knight. The old king is not supporting that break. And if white is unable to play e4 and play c4, you're not developing initiative, and so you won't be able to get like a good advantage out of the opening or any kind of advantage. So if you try to play some weird Ruy Lopez, which is not, black say could play knight bd7, and in the future they can play with c5, which you cannot. And that's one of the reasons why white plays this c4 move on the next move, because e4 is a dream that usually he cannot get. So to always capture with the pawn, yes. So if we are having an in case it's move 3 and black is capturing here, we're always capturing with the pawn. Now in the middle game things might change, right? So in the middle game there are many times when we can take with the piece, because there is a sequence of moves that allow exchanges, and we're gonna analyze why sometimes black would be willing to take with the knight here. But again, it's more in the middle game. As early as this, white is taking on d5, black is capturing with the pawn. Mainly you don't take here with the piece when you allow e4, right? So if say you would have the knight here, for example, right, or the bishop, something controlling basically this e4 square, then it would be all right. But white just plays knight c3 again and e4 next move, right? So allowing this mobile center when okay, say queen a5 and say e4 is a big problem for black in this opening. So that's why you, instead of remembering what to take with, it's better to remember that e4 is something you don't want to allow, right? Easily, at the very least. Does that answer a question, Mangrover? Abishnek is also here. Very nice to see same people joining, right? So we're starting with the basics, and gradually we're gonna build on it and expand on various lines for white and black. So first things first, as we start playing d4 openings and we switch from e4 to d4, it's very important for all of you to know what happens after black takes the pawn. And the move that person I recommend is e3, but there are alternatives. One could play e4 and finally achieve his dream. That's one of the most sharp attempts for most of the advantage. And at the same time, while you're grabbing the center, we're also attacking the pawn on c4. But it could get a little bit sharp, and after e5, you gotta know what you're doing, because you won't win the pawn back very, say, easily. So usually it's like takes on d4, takes bishop takes c4, and after knight c6, you need to know what to do to, say, win this pawn back comfortably. And it's playable for both sides, white and black. Now, e3 wins back the pawn very comfortably, and there are pretty much no lines where black can hold on to the pawn and have a good position. So that's why this is good for us, for you guys, intermediate players. And the first probably and the most straightforward attempt for black to hold on to the pawn would be b5. When the position is just very ugly, white needs to remember a4 and just attacking the wedge of the pawn chain at the base of and the main weakness of that b5 c4 pawn chain. And we're trying to scatter the pawns and rip them apart. So for example, you could imagine like these 4 pawns, they're not gonna stay there for long. Say queen e4, queen takes c4, and already white has central control, lead in development, disaster for black basically, right? But many of you might be thinking, what happens if c6? a6 is very easy move to punish. We just take on b5 and black is unable to capture back the pawn on b5 because there is a pin on the a file. But all of you who play Queen's Gambit already know the trap that white has after c6, but all of you who see this for the first time, there is a nice rook trap in the corner with queen f3. So that's being the main line and the main trap how you can win games if you're like 1200 and below in Queen Gambit accepted. I myself won like 50 games like that when I was growing up, right? So that's the idea. Now, there are a few other attempts that black can try to hold on to the pawn, say, they always end badly. Like, for example, bishop d7, we undermine the pawns. They're weak, they're attacked, and they're scattered. And, for example, we could already play b3, and next move we're threatening to take on c4, and they cannot take on b3 due to this pin that is on this diagonal, right? So again, like losing tempos, it just always, okay, here I can even take on c4. It's just always basically a bad idea, right? So I guess next move we're just taking on c4. Queen d5, c4 is just terrible. Why did I even put this on the board? So most of the attempts to hold on to that pawn is not good for black. It's in fact disastrous. But there is one move that black can try, and it's not very, very bad, although it looks really ugly. But bishop e6 is interesting, and here it's not so straightforward. There are grandmasters that do play this against weaker players, so say grandmasters playing like 2000, 2200, and there are even grandmasters that play this with black against other grandmasters as a surprise weapon. White has big advantage here, but it's not so all shiny and straightforward. So I'm gonna give you an easy way of giving the pawn back, and I'm gonna give you an ambitious line over here. All right. So the easy way of winning the pawn back is simply knight a3. So knight a3, next move, whatever he plays, we're taking on c4. And if you don't want to learn any theory, if you want to just have all right positions, so for example, knight to f6, and then we take on c4, right? You can have it. It's all right position, small edge, and you gain the pawn back. Now, for all of you who are a little bit more ambitious in the opening, there is a move knight f3. So we start with this move knight to f3. Our opponent, say, plays knight to f6, and then we play knight to c3. The idea of knight f3 is to attempt to displace the bishop on e6, and if they allow white to take on e6 and damage their pawn structure like this, it's probably lost position for black. So that is an idea. We don't know yet exactly at which moment we want to do it, because if, say, here we play knight g5, there's always this bishop to d5, and we haven't achieved much. And for this reason, after knight f3, we play knight to c3. And from here, we're threatening to play the same knight g5, and at the same time, we're threatening to play e4. For example, c6 with the intention of playing b5, knight to g5. Bishop already has no good squares to go to. If bishop d5, then e4. Notice how this is always dropping as well when the bishop is leaving that diagonal, right? And so say bishop g4, f3 kicking the bishop out. We gained our pawn back with dividends, and we have this massive center. I just give you this line. When it's insanely comfortable position for white, we have the center that is very strong. The bishop on h5 is out of place. Our knight, if kicked out, could remaneuver to f4 to continue hitting the bishop, and it's more than we can dream of out of the opening. Like if this is the position that I will always get from Queen's Gambit, I would play no other openings. I would always play this with white, right? Those of you who just joined or the first time are in my streams, please trust me, I don't bite. I would like all of you to say hello in the chat, participate actively. I'm gonna give you a lot of exercises today. Ask me questions that are chess related, and I really like to interact with all of you and even start discussions if anything interesting pops in the chat. So once we have taken care of these weird attempts for black to hold on to the pawn, we can proudly say that Queen's Gambit accepted when black is trying to hold on to the pawn is good for white. But we cannot say that if black plays normally, white has a lot of an advantage, and this is not playable for black. In fact, I think Queen's Gambit Accepted is slightly worse than Decline, but it's a playable line as long as we know what we're doing and we're playing normally. So usually black is not trying to hold on to the pawn. We are getting it back comfortably, and the whole idea of e3 is really just to win that pawn back with comfort. Afterwards, what we want to get is knight c3, knight f3, e4, and if black does not undermine our center, we're gonna get a winning endgame, right? A winning middle game. So for example, imagine e6, knight to f3, and now white is threatening to get these mobile pawns in the center, which is very, very powerful. And the way you play against mobile center of opponents is you try to destroy it. So if black was to play passively, and even like I have seen 17, 1800s doing that, like bishop e7, just trying to be very solid as black, it's simply a disaster. We're gonna play e4. Now these mobile pawns will transition to space advantage, and that will transpose to a kingside attack. It's very easy game for white if black doesn't know what they're doing. Hello, Wolfgang. Hello. So basically, white is playing with e4 and d4. Luca is asking about the rating. I don't play at all, right? So only online ratings. Online, my rating is around 23, 2400 on most popular websites in Blitz. So e4 and d4 is very strong center for white. Usually the way white plays these positions is with e5, and then we're using this e4 square to maneuver our pieces to king side. So say queen d3, queen e4, queen is getting to the king side. Sometimes we could play knight e4 and maneuver it to the king side. Sometimes rook could be lifted to the king side. And as you see, white's potential is already insane on the king side. All of these pieces easily could go there, and black just cannot keep up with the same numbers. After queen e2, practically I think black is already having close to losing position. So this is why, as you're playing Queen's Gambit Accepted with black, it is very important to try to destroy the opponent's mobile center. And also, if black plays c5s, we always have to consider d5 and e5 as white. These are our go-to reactions, first candidate moves when black is attempting to destroy it, right? So let's go back, and after knight f3, let's play it correctly with black. The only pretty much way of playing this is with c5. So if black doesn't play c5, you're gonna run into troubles, right? Now for white, there is a choice. So castles, and now imagine c takes d4. And if you're already playing Queen's Gambit, you must know one thing. I don't want to spoil it. I just want to ask, how would you take from this position? Would you play e takes d4, knight takes d4, or queen takes d4? We're going to look, Hiroshi, we're going to look at declined. First, I want to start with accepted, okay? We're going to look at declined as well. No, Hiroshi, actually, accepted is played by grandmasters. It's popular line. Accepted is by any means not a bad opening. So how would you take with white here? So I almost don't see the correct answer. Only one person yet said the correct answer. Just play a one-on-one. These are not banter blitz sessions. These are lessons. So it's not for playing. I'm sure that there are going to be many banter blitz soon, and you can observe other players playing. I myself barely play at all. Today we're going to learn the opening Queen's Gambit. Yeah, Hiroshi, but it's not one picture. Queen's Gambit Accepted, you also have some benefits out of it as black as well. Like, for example, initiative, and if white doesn't know what to do, black can equalize very comfortably in a lot of lines as well. For example, many of you are incorrect here. The move that is practically and objectively probably the best is taking with the pawn. In fact, in this position, if you look at the database, 95% of grandmasters take with the pawn, and that means something, right? The reason for that is because after you're taking with the knight, you get temporarily lead in development, and that advantage will soon vanish. So black is gonna play bishop c5, and all of these games that we have seen in the database, black is equalized in 4 or 5 moves. So you're gonna develop pieces, he's gonna develop pieces, and then you're thinking like, where is my advantage? And if you're not super good at maneuvering, since black gives you no targets and he has no weaknesses, it's really hard to develop initiative. And if you're not able to find an object of an attack and develop initiative, then this lead in development is nowhere to be found to give you an advantage, right? And yeah, say knight b3, bishop d6, I'm already like threatening probably to take on h2. And there are these tricks that could follow, right? At some point. So it's not yet so straightforward, and that's why many people like to take with the pawn. As I said, 95% of the grandmasters, because this is not a temporary advantage that you have. You have a better bishop compared to his bishop. You have open e-file, and you have an outpost on e5 for your knight. So this is isolated pawn position, and as a Queen's Gambit player or any opening with d4, you must start loving isolated pawn. So objectively in the endgame, white is lost, but in the middle game, white has a lot better position, and we can get rid of that isolated pawn pretty much whenever we want in the middle game with d5. So black cannot prevent this. And I'm gonna just show you a couple of dangers that we could get to. Everyone who is enjoying the stream, I would appreciate if you could put a like on this video. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. So let's just observe these isolated pawn positions for a little bit. Like I'm making normal moves, right? a3 is a move that often is played. It's prophylaxis against knight a5, so that we would maintain the bishop on this long diagonal where we support the break d5. And so imagine black plays a6 with a simple idea. b5, bishop b7, and having huge grip on this d5 square so that the weakness of whites would be blocked. So we just play bishop a2 not to run to knight a5, b5 and d5. And white is developing insane initiative. I bet that here in a practical game, white is close to winning even maybe. It's really hard to play black. And the main point being is that after all these exchanges, black cannot exchange queens. Because if we do, we're down a piece. c6 is hanging, e7 is hanging, right? So say bishop to b7, we can take, followed by rook takes e7. And so it turns out that after all these exchanges, we have so-called open center. And in open center, where there are no pawns, the only objective evaluation of the position is depending on the pieces. And after bishop to b7 and queen h5, look at white's pieces, right? And compare them to black. Like, how do you defend your king here as black? And there was a grandmaster game that I like to show to my students. Queen c7 and bishop g5. And the attack is very, very scary. And too many pieces of white's already coming. Bishop can always switch to diagonal. From here, it's also attacking. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pieces attacking the black's king, right? So Hiroshi, I think all openings are drawish if black is playing them correctly, right? So on a theoretical level in correspondence chess, even Albin's counter Gambit equalizes, right? Like not equalizes, but white cannot win. So in modern chess, I think most of the openings are somewhat drawish, but they're drawish for computers. And for us humans, especially if you're not 2700, it shouldn't matter. Play what you feel like you understand, know your ideas, and there are too many ideas for white to try in Queen's Gambit Accepted, that black would just learn them all, right? So yeah, people agree, right? Hello, Alex. Very nice to see you. I'm welcoming all the questions in the chat. Please participate, be active. Yes, Abhishek, you can play Queen's Gambit. Yeah. Real Best says he's 2360. Very good. Yeah, I think we're gonna do also a video on attacking. So Today is Queen's Gambit, and I have to leave time for declined as well, right? So gonna show you one beautiful attack. It's almost practically impossible to defend this with black. Computer might, but humans, there are too many pieces of whites coming. Watch this. So h6. If white goes back, black is equal. Rook to e3. What is a kingside attack? Is one side having more pieces on the king side than the other, right? So the idea is if we take rook h3 is gonna be made. So in the game, black played knight to a5. The idea is to put the knight on c4 and block the bishop. Queen g6. Now you cannot take my queen because my bishop is pinning the pawn. So we have takes on g5, rook h3. Now we want mate on h7. Rook goes back and prepares the escape plan for black. And white played rook e1, black resigned. So, like, that's what I mean by this pawn break d5 after, say, a6, what we were looking at, is transposing to an open center, and then it all depends on the pieces. And usually white has better pieces from the isolated pawn positions in the middle game because they have more space, right? So, more correct way of playing this with black would be with b6, right? So, not wasting too much time. And then say d5 right away, and white is again comfortably slightly better in these positions. So that's why black shouldn't hurry to take, and that's why taking with the pawn could be so dangerous for black, right? So most of the time people play a6, and now there are many ways to play. We could take on c5 and just play an endgame. I'm gonna give you a plan here, because if you play randomly and not know where to develop these pieces, let's say you put them like that, then you could end up being worse. You can imagine b5, bishop b7 comes, and these bishops are monsters. I have seen black winning these out of the opening, right? So the idea is to get the knight to d2, and then this bishop could come to c3. One of the many plans. You could also just play b3, bishop b2, of course, right? But say I like to play knight bd2 to bring the knight here, and now bishop d2 to c3, rook c1, and all of your pieces are developed. This bishop after b5 will go back to e2, and sometimes it could go to f3. So that's my plan for you in the endgame. How to take advantage of the isolated pawn. Let's get back to the isolated pawn. So the advantage is superior pieces that is being brought from space and central control advantage. So you don't need anything to get advantage out of it. You already have it. You take on d4 and your bishop is better than his bishop, right? So you have a better piece. You have an e-file, which he does not have. You have two outposts for the knights, e5 and c5, that he does not. So isolated pawn gives you more central control and more space, which gives you better pieces. So it's a static advantage. It won't vanish. Like, even if I just develop the pieces to normal squares without any action, I'm still having better pieces. So it's not a dynamic advantage that if you don't play something, it's gonna vanish. The only way you can get worse with the isolated pawn is if, of course, opponent leads the development. So if you lead development, it's better to play with and against isolated pawn. The player that leads the development is just so important. But if it's around equal, and say if you're, especially if you're playing white, then the only thing that you have to avoid is endgame, where you exchange minor pieces. But for black to be exchanging here minor pieces is very hard. Like, imagine I play knight c3. At some point, okay, bishop e7, rook e1, castles, bam, bam, let's just say a random move, right? And if I say play knight e5 here, if you take, this is already not isolated pawn. So I'm just changing the structure. If you play, say, the knight on d5, and you take on c3, again, you're changing the structure. So for black to exchange the minor pieces and not changing the structure is very hard. And of course, I refer to pawn structure. That's why white is saying either I'm gonna change the structure to the endgame, to like hanging pawns, or I'm gonna kill you in the middle game. That's the argument you have. Hope this makes sense, Hiroshi. And all of you who just joined, I'm welcoming everyone to participate actively in the chat. Hello, Tanmai. And I would appreciate if those who are here would put a like on this video, guys. Thank you very much. So just want to give you one alternative. We're exactly 30 minutes in with the lesson. So we're gonna start Queen's Gambit declined. And if you don't want to play this AND game after d takes c5, we could just play it with a4, right? So for example, a4, knight c6, and now I have very good idea for you guys. Queen e2 followed by rook d1. Very much known idea, and with the same isolated pawn, this is going to be much stronger, because once we get this break, my rook is on the same file as your queen. So all of the ideas you saw previously are even much stronger here. And due to tactics, black is unable to hold to the pawn, right? So after bishop c5, they are just not able to hold on to everything. Like, there are pins everywhere, and so he's gonna run into problems, right? So let's say knight takes d4, for example, takes, and ready we have this pin, and after bishop e3, we're getting the piece back, right? So I guess e5 doesn't work because pawn is pinned, right? So this idea of playing queen to e2 followed by rook d1 after c takes d4 is what promises white very good middle game chances, right? So for example, bishop to e7 was seen in a couple of games, takes, and we play exactly similar position to what we had before, where white's plan is probably d5. Sometimes you could also go for kingside attack, but then you're wasting time to maneuver the bishop, right? And I can leave you at that, I think. Azi Abduli, very nice to hear that you're just started chess and you're enjoying. Someone saying, I put a like, but I don't know if I like it yet. Thank you very much. I really try my best, right? I will give you my absolute best. So we're gonna learn the decline variation now, which is going to be the second part of the... Yeah, Hiroshi, you're welcome. Everyone who just joined, please participate in the chat, ask me questions. So it's a weird move order. We could get to this from e6, which is called Queen's Gambit declined. The main idea that after c takes d5, black takes with the pawn and maintains control over e4. That's the main thing. Here we are going to follow a game played by Karpov versus Lubavitch. Top 10 player in the 80s, I believe he was. And this is going to be a very instructive game that we can learn from. So from Queen's Gambit declined, there are a couple of ways to play this. We could be playing this with just bishop to g5. But another interesting line, which is even the most popular one, is to enter the so-called Carlsbad structure. Some refer to this as Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation, and we're doing c takes d5 here. So just like in the previous lines, knight takes d5 is dubious, or okay, not dubious, but slightly inaccurate because of allowing white the center. There are players that play like this. The idea is that they are trying to destroy it, but e takes d5 is by all means a better move. And in these structures, it turns out that black is going to have problems with this light square bishop. And it's a root of a problem in all Queen's Gambit declines for black. If black is able to activate that bishop and make it comfortable, usually black is fine. But it's not as easy as it looks. Yes, Porky, it's going to be online. Everyone who is a bit late to the stream, you will be able to rewatch it on Chess24 channel. Yeah, someone is saying they're scared of bishop to b4. So the idea is this, that if we play something like this, let's just go d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, and someone is scared of bishop b4. That's their good bishop. So it is playable. It's called Rogozin variation, and also if the pawn was on d7, it would be called the Nimzovich. But over here, it's not something that we should be afraid or scared of. This pin is not something that is a dangerous. He's not threatening to win a pawn or anything like that. And especially with d5, I don't see any threat that black could create against it, right? So say knight to f3, knight to f6, and okay, like the only real threat would be, say, going here, but even then we can protect the knight many times, right? And the theory goes on and on. It is another very popular variation to play with black, but there is nothing that you should be afraid of over there. So in this line of the Carlsbad, we're gonna be touching bishop g5, which is the main move. Black plays c6, as c5 already doesn't give good isolated pawn over here. There are always ideas of taking and taking on d5 in the air, and if you're not leading the development, usual isolated pawn, it's not ideal, or opponent will have slightly better position. So usually players play c6, and again, if they try to develop this bishop very early on, then a lot of the times the move to watch out for is queen b3, right? Not to say only that, but also bishop f6 and knight takes d5, right? So black is unable to develop that light square bishop just yet, so they wait with c6. Now we play e3, and since our bishop is protected, you might be thinking, why doesn't bishop go to f5 now? And this is a very important moment, because if you don't play the right moves here with white, black is equal. So for example, if I was to play knight f3, black has zero, nada problems here. If black comfortably, without consequences, develops the light square bishop and gets it on a nice active square like f5, black is just equal. So the punishment lays in the move queen f3. And we're attacking the knight on f6 2 times, which is going to damage opponent's pawn structure. Yes, chess player 1-on-1. Queen f3, exactly. So bishop g6, and then we enter this endgame. Black does not want to take with the pawn, because with queens on the board, it's even more dangerous for the black's king around such damaged pawn structure. So there is this endgame, and I'm going to show you short game of Carlsen versus Kramnik, how Carlsen got a really good position. So white plays knight to f3, knight to d7, and knight to h4, and we're just starting to touch the bishop. We can take whenever we want, we don't want to take right now. And Carlsen is going to show us a very interesting plan. Since it's already an endgame, Carlsen is remaneuvering the knight to g3, so that one of the knights could jump on the weakened square of f5. It's a very juicy outpost where opponent cannot kick the knight out from there. So knight b6 played by Kramnik, knight g3, check, king d1, king is okay there, it's endgame, guys, right? Knight to a4, and now knight g to f5. And very simple plan for white. As you can see, pawns are weak in the endgames. They're usually if you have a damaged pawn structure, endgame is usually bad for you. If black takes on b2, then we just kick the knight out and then have rook to b1 or king to b3 if they play knight a4 with a double attack, and white is regaining everything. And if they were to go knight to c4, then we have takes, and rook b1, and we have a skewer. And after black loses the pawn on b7, white has really good advantage. I guess a5 runs into a3, so that of no help. So in these positions, as you can see, very simple plan, and this is usually why black is not willing to go for this structure. All you perhaps need to remember is queen f3. So in the game we have knight b to d7, bishop d3 by white. In these openings, if say black plays bishop e7, white avoids to bring the knight to f3 too early, not to allow black comfortably develop the bishop with bishop g4. So they would play bishop d3, queen to c2, only then knight to f3. Again, the root of the problems for black is the bishop on f5. So bishop to d3 and bishop e7, queen c2, and castles. So in this position, there are a couple of plans that white can choose from. And yes, even people are suggesting the plans. So someone is saying queenless middle game was there. Yeah, I have heard that saying as well. So there are 3 plans here. 2 of them are the main ones. Chess player 1-on-1 is suggesting one. So knight g to e2, f3 and e4 is a plan that I wanted to show you today, but I don't know if we are gonna have time. But this is a very easy plan to know. Basically, white is just playing knight g to e2, say castles, and now what we want is to play knight here, f3, need to guard d4, so rook d1, and then at some point we're gonna hit with e4. And that is usually the most popular plan, at least in the modern chess. And we're going to see another plan that I like no less than this one, And it's connected with the idea of the minority attack. White in this position wants to play rook to b1 and play b4, b5. Now people are questioning, first of all, why it is called minority attack and what is the essential goal of all this. So it's called minority attack because white has pawn minority on the queen side, 3 pawns versus 4. And the objective of the minority attack is to always create a weakness on an open file. So currently, if white was at some point to play rook c1, there is not much to attack on the c6 and in general on the queen side. Now in your imagination, try to exchange the b pawns. Then suddenly c6 pawn becomes weak. By definition, weakness is something that cannot be guarded by pawns. And so then I have realistic pressure of doubling up the pawns and just trying to attack this pawn, right? So white is just launching this pawn storm, b4, b5. And if they take, okay, nevertheless, isolated pawn and weaknesses still exist on the queen side. And perhaps the third plan that is the rarest is just long castle in these positions and go crazy with the pawn storm and try to kill the black's king on the king side, right? Objectively, the first two plans are more correct. So, is there any way to know when it's okay to push f6 or f3 without it being too weakening the Dar squares? So, here, if we play knight g2 a2, usually if there is something to punish you for, so at some point it would be c5 and other openings to try to open up this diagonal. But as you can see, f3, e4 for now is not weakening our position in such a way. Instead, we're getting f3 and e4, which is going to build us massive center. And I wish we have more time today. I don't know if we're gonna be in time. I hope we will. But all of you, Bratia, and I will have a game prepared to exactly show you the plan with f3 and e4. If we hurry enough with this game and I show you minority attack, I promise we're gonna see this, and moves are gonna tell more than my words, right? So in this game, Karpov is gonna execute the minority attack perfectly. It's a perfect example of what ideal game for white would look like. So black is playing rook to e8, castles, and since black has problems with this bishop, usually knight goes to f8 to allow this bishop square on e6. We're never playing b6 almost because c6 is again weakened, and so knight f8 was what black played in this one. Is castling queenside in Queen's Gambit ideal? No, it's far from ideal. I think that there is too much counter for black then. So if we castle long here, pawn storm is just too quick. I think that c-file can get open. I'm not saying instantly right now, but c5 is gonna come very quickly. But it's not playable. I think that it's roughly balanced, but it's a fight. And I have friends that are masters. They continue playing this against friendly matches against me, and the games go both ways, right? So white wins, black wins. It's a fight, but I cannot say it's ideal, right? So white goes rook b1, and he just wants b4, b5. Knight e4 is very typical idea. Looks like a blender, but black is discovering the attack against bishop on g5. And you can notice that it's attacked 3 times and only guarded once currently. But white's bishop takes on e7. It's pretty much one of the only moves. And then black has enough coverage for e4. So what ideally black wants in these positions is counterplay on the king side. Right, so knights start jumping. We have seen such games like bishop g4, knight is coming there and just attacking the white's king as a measure of counterplay is one of the ways to fight this offward black. But in this game, white goes counterattack, a6, a4, bishop to f5, knight to e5, and white's army, which is very interesting, all on the queen side. So all that white needs right now is to create a target. And that target is going to be created by playing b5. One of these pawns is gonna become weak. We just don't know which one. And then we're gonna combine our army to attack that point. Yeah, exactly, Bratia. So it's called minority attack, and here we're just creating a weakness, and we're gonna be creating problems, right? I appreciate for likes on this video, guys. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. It means that you're enjoying this stream. Thank you very much, guys. So Bright is asking if there is a regular stream schedule. I stream on this time every Friday on Chess24 and on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. CST. So I'm gonna type it in the chat if anyone wants to watch. And Fridays, this is my current schedule, guys. Yes, Abai, it's Minority Attack. So you're gonna see that one of those pawns is gonna become weak, and then white is gonna attack that point. Now, one thing to note is that Minority Attack doesn't get weaker in the endgame. So if we were exchanging the minor pieces, it doesn't become weaker. Minority Attack is strong both middle game and endgame. So bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, just massive exchanges. And then takes, and b5. And whatever black plays, one pawn is gonna be weak. So for example, take. This is the target, and the white's goal is to really, how to highlight that? Win that pawn and then win the game, right? So win the endgame. Okay, we can look at alternatives, right? What else? If he doesn't do anything, takes, this is weak, and this is eaten, right? I know, takes, and say a5, right? Then we play b6, this is weak, plus I get the 7th rank. So whatever we really do with the pawns, no matter what, that's the point of Minority Attack. Weakness is going to be created on open file. So in the game we had takes, and rook d6, and then takes, this is a weakness. Now, if pieces were here of whites, same pawn could be a strength, and black pieces were there. Then if black is more active on that side of the board, this is power. This is no weakness. It all depends on who is more active. That's why we have Minority Attack and also Majority Attack in chess, right? So here white just attacked that pawn, and the rook endgame was won by Karpov, right? So white is just very passive, and then he went to win the game. So this is the ideal picture of what we are trying to achieve with this Minority Attack. Abai, I don't know, maybe someone else is gonna cover the Slav. I'm not yet sure. Thank you very much, Sly. I'm very happy that its sound is good and everything is clear. Thank you very much. And also, audience, I really enjoy teaching you guys. I can see that same people are coming. I appreciate for the likes, and it's very nice to be reading nice comments under the video when I go to sleep. It really makes my day and makes even my life meaningful, I could say. Thank you very much. Right, and now we have time for Brate and others to show the third plan. And the third plan is going to be with knight to f3, knight e2 and knight g3. So we have very similar position. And same thing, queen to c2 again. Avoid knight to f3. Watch the video again. You don't want to allow this bishop to be active. That's the root of the problems for black. So he tries bishop g4 in this game. And we're gonna watch one of the Polgar sisters, the Sousa Polgar, I think. Which Polgar was it? There are 3 Polgar sisters. Yeah, Sousa Polgar played this one. And white is gonna play with knight g2 e2 this time. So the idea of black's move bishop g4 was that they exchange that bishop for the knight, as it's always very passive. If they don't, we play f3, knight f4, and black is going to have to exchange that bishop for the knight anyway, right? So as the bishop is going somewhere, knight to f4 is very active. So she took, knight bd7, castles, everything makes sense. And this time white is gonna play with f3 and e4. And that was something that Brate and others were asking, what about this plan? Thank you, Ariane. Thank you very much. And so here white is just going for e4 to build this mobile center. And the only way black can fight against this and in any kind of positions against the mobile centers is by trying to destroy it. So black needs to undermine it or destroy it or block it. Like, there are no other plans. You never you have to restrain yourself from any kind of wing activity when opponent has these 2 or more pawns in the center. You gotta fight against that. So if the knight was on e2 and the bishop was on c8, we would place the knight on g2. Now, what is the problem with playing this amongst low level? And guys, all of you who want to play this and have never played this before, please focus right now very, very much. Okay? The point is this, that e4 is easy to protect. You can always place there the knight to g3 if it was there. You can place the rook on e1. This is not the problem. The poison with this variations for white is that after we play e4 takes, d4 becomes exposed. That is the problem. And the point that you need to protect is the most, or not the most, but protect enough, is d4. So usually rook goes to d1, queen goes to f2, or bishop goes to f2. That's going to be the weak point. Because as we play that e4, right, at some point, like knight to f8, e4, right, this is usually the weak point. That's what white needs to protect a couple of times. And that's not something that you can think of intuitively if you have never played this before. So it requires a lot of emphasis from me. I just don't want you to be playing this and losing, yeah? Learn from my mistakes, not from your own, I guess, right? c5 is dangerous, right? So we play c5, we play isolated pawn, right? But I could also not touch anything, right? But even the isolated pawn seems to be a bit dangerous sometimes, right? So understand what you're trying to do, right? But d5 always is dropping, right? It seems. So knight takes d5 could just be played, I guess, right? But at worst, I think I could play rook a d1 and say after c4, I nevertheless can play e4 later, right? So I play bishop f5 and I get e4 anyway. But this time you don't have that pressure anymore that you wanted, right? So c5 is a move to always consider. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're welcome, Brata. Is Harry push good in Queen's Gambit decline? Hiroshi, remember this. I'm gonna give you a general answer. And all of you, right? One of the most important rules in chess. When you have achieved dominance over the center, or the center is blocked, then you can play on the flank, and you must play on the flank. So Harry, the pawn, can move in any opening if you have achieved dominance over the center or the center is blocked. There are of course exceptions, but in general that's when you know. So if you look at the center and you say, I am the boss here, I'm the alpha in the center, then you can go g4, h4, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want on the sides, right? Whatever you please. Because counterplay that you're worried about is usually in the center the most, right? So here black played knight f8 and white goes bishop h4. That's what I was saying. And bishop goes back to f2 to protect d4, right? So the fact that b2 is weak, someone is saying, it's irrelevant from practical sense. It's easily guardable and very hard to attack. Because, okay, like queen b6 is just going in the wrong direction. Remember what I said against mobile center when white is going to achieve that. The only plan of blacks is to destroy it. There are no other plans. Because if you start playing on the wings there, right, somewhere, I'm gonna just go through you, like with the tank, right? Roll over, and it's not good. So, okay, a6, waste of time, I guess, and rook d1, overprotecting d4, knight g6, bishop f2, bishop d6, e4. And now it's too late. Black had to destroy the center. And now they're just not in time to put realistic pressure on it. So if you if you don't take on e4, it's even worse. I get e5. So she took so that at least, or he took that, at least d4 would be exposed. So now at least you have counterplay against that. And when this situation happens, black would be absolutely fine. I don't want you to always think that this is a terrible for the side of blacks. But it's usually only good when you have really good pressure against decent realistic threats, or you have chances to undermine it or block it, right? So this is not always one-sided, but here black doesn't have enough, right? So pieces are just not on the right squares. So knight g4, and now e5 gives up the d5 square, but you're getting so much more out of it that it's just very good for white. You win space advantage, bishop is restricted, you take away f6 square, and once you have such a dominance of the center, that transposes to space advantage, and that transitions to kingside attack, right? So bishop c7, and here is just lost. So we're piling up against f7, right? So rook e7, king h1, takes, doubling up, and we're just attacking f7. Now, one weakness is not enough to win the game. And so what we really need is to create a second weakness. And white is going to attack h7. So she figure out Sousa Polgarath a plan. Queen h5 and knight g5 and attacking h7. So really nice. And then rook d3 is coming to h3. h6, rook f3, and the opponent with the black pieces is just lost. So they played knight e5, sacked the piece, and it turns out to be incorrect, but there is nothing else that black can try, right? So this is what you want from that plan with f3 and e4. Yes, so as we go back against this f3 plan, right, when I'm saying that he's getting that, black needed to set up the pieces to destroy this. And let me just grab one example of exactly same structure. I'm gonna give it to you guys because we have some more minutes, but we don't have time to look at another game. So I'm gonna just grab it from my database, okay? And I'm gonna tell you exactly what you want to see. And I'm welcoming all the questions. If you guys have any kind of questions that you want to ask, please go ahead. So I'm going to give you exactly, I just have to find it right here. So here we go. All right. Okay. Because I didn't expect that question to be. Something is wrong with my computer, I guess. But if I could describe it in words, then the main plan of blacks is really to attack that center, and there is no other plan for black. You need to either attack it, undermine it with pawn breaks. So pawn breaks would be such as c5 and f5, or block it. So at some point, if you manage to blockade it as it moves, then it is fine. Say in the same position, if I had this knight on e6 and this knight was, for example, on d5, black is fine. So as it moves, but it's blockaded well, then it's absolutely fine. I don't know if we could waste some moves here for one side, right? But say, I don't know, something like this, if pawn wasn't dropping, right, then it would be already, but now the knight is trapped. Okay, knight is not trapped. We can take on f2. Here it goes. So this is already fine for black, right? So this is just one of the three ways. And then black is hoping to undermine that center. So it's same from every opening where one side is having a lot of pawns, right? Like taken as example, I think one of the best examples would be the King's Indian 4 pawns attack, right? And it's the same thing. So for example, f4, castles, knight f3. Everyone who is seeing this for the first time with white, they're saying, oh, white is supposed to be winning because this is just insane center that they have. But black, I mean, Grandmaster is looking at this and he's asking himself, can black destroy, undermine, or block the center? And if he can do one of those things, then he is fine. So black is playing c5, and you will start having problems with the center. d5, e6, and I'm just exploding and bombarding, right? So say bishop d3, takes, rook e8, and here it's already unclear. I pick black, right? White starts having problems. And so it's the same with all of those openings where one side has more pawns in the center. Like take Alahain as an example. Whites give you this, black is giving you the center, but then he attempts to destroy it. And if you cannot maintain it, right, it's like that king who died from overeating too much candies, right? So the point is to grab all that space if you're able to maintain that territory. But if you grab a lot of territory and you leave a lot of weaknesses behind and you're not developed to cover them all, that will turn against you. So hope that that makes sense. So thank you very much, guys, for being so active today. I really appreciate all of you. It means a lot, all of these likes on the video that you put, all of those comments and those active discussions that we're having. I hope to see you all next week, Friday, same time, and on Tuesday, 8 p.m. CEST. And we're going to be discussing more interesting topics about chess. During these times, what can I wish you? First of all, stay safe and healthy. Continue enjoying the game, play chess, and enjoy life, guys. All right, so thank you all for watching and see you next week. Bye bye, my friends.